It starts right now. After being disinvited, then re-invited, essentially, Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib is now saying she will not visit the West Bank, not on Israel's terms, she says. And now the controversy President Trump started with a tweet is getting even uglier and more personal. Betting on the economy and rattled by the warning signs, does President Trump have any new ideas besides throwing shade at the Fed? Plus, an American mother's heartbreaking battle in Saudi Arabia, a Saudi judge ruling she cannot have custody of her young daughter because she's too Western. Welcome to the lead. I'm Jake Tapper, and we begin with the world lead today and the standoff continuing between two U.S. members of Congress versus President Trump and the government of Israel, after that country barred the first two Muslim women elected to the U.S. House of Representatives to make an official visit following pressure from President Trump to block them. The Israeli government did allow Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who has relatives in the West Bank, to visit on humanitarian grounds, specifically to see her elderly grandmother. But Tlaib today rejected that offer because, she says, Israel told her she could not promote the boycott of Israel while there. Tlaib saying in a statement, quote, "When I won the election to become a United States Congresswoman, many Palestinians, especially my grandmother, felt a sense of hope, a hope that they would finally have a voice. I cannot allow the Israeli government to take that away from them or to use my deep desire to see my grandmother, potentially for the last time, as a political bargaining chip," unquote. The Israeli Interior Minister today said of Tlaib's decision, quote, "Her hatred of Israel is stronger than her love of her grandmother." CNN's Oren Lieberman is live for us now in Jerusalem. And Oren, you spoke with Tlaib's family in the West Bank. What is their reaction to all this?
We went to the village of Bet Or, just north of Jerusalem, which is the ancestral home of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, and her family supports her in this decision. They say Israel's restrictions are unfair and a form of oppression, and they support her in that they say she should only come visit if it's as a duly elected sitting member of the U.S. Congress, not under Israeli restrictions.
We are against the conditional visit of Rashida to Palestine. Rashida has the right to visit Palestine as a Palestinian, regardless of being a congresswoman, as any citizen with a U.S. passport has the right to come and visit their family without any conditions or pressure.
Her uncle even suggested that maybe they would try to get visas for her elderly grandmother and make the trip to the U.S., which Jake might only start this same fight on that side of the Atlantic.
Right. And Oren, Israel had originally said that Congresswomen Tlaib and Omar could visit. They changed their minds after pressure from President Trump. Netanyahu is facing re-election in a month. What favors might he want from Trump to help him get re-elected?
And a very difficult re-election campaign with a fractured right-wing voter base at that. There is no doubt that Trump is a big part of Netanyahu's re-election campaign. They're on billboards together in Tel Aviv. Netanyahu's messaging is very much about Trump because Trump is more popular here than he is in the U.S. Trump gave Netanyahu huge political gifts before the April election, U.S. recognition of Israeli sovereignty in the Golan Heights, adding the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps to the terror list, which Netanyahu took partial credit for. What could it be this time to try to get Netanyahu over the line? Well, it could be something smaller like a defense pact, perhaps a visit from Trump to Israel. He could even see the settlement named after him in the Golan Heights. Or it could be even bigger. Perhaps Trump would acknowledge that Israel has some sort of right to annex settlements in the West Bank. And that would be an enormous statement overturning decades of U.S. foreign policy, which Trump has certainly done in the past when it comes to Israel. Jake, on that last one, depending on if Trump goes that way and what he says, that might even supersede Israeli law because Israel has never recognized Israeli sovereignty in West Bank settlements.
All right, Oren, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let's chew over all this with my experts here. David Urban, let me start with you. You're a Trump 2020 campaign advisor. Take a listen to former Senator Joe Lieberman, the only Jewish American who's been on a major party's presidential ticket, talking to CNN about this issue this morning. He's a very strong supporter of Israel and actually has been supportive of Trump's relationship with Israel.
I think it was a serious mistake because it's contrary to the values of the State of Israel, the values of the United States of America, which have been the underlying foundation of our relationship.
What do you think?
Yeah, look, so I think there's this is a pretty complicated situation here, right? This isn't just two ordinary Congress people going there to take in both sides of the issue. I think, dug down a little bit, obviously, when you look at the group MIFTA, who was their sponsor here, obviously had led another group of congressional folks over before for a trip. But the group founded by Hannah Ashwari, who's been kind of a pillar in Palestinian politics for a long time, they refused to sign the terror, that they're not going to take part in terror, right? They refused to condemn. They've even glorified one of the first female Palestinian suicide bombers who blew herself up and killed one Jewish settler and injured another 150. They called her a part of the resistance. They didn't come out and condemn that. So I would say if the two congressmen were there going there to collect facts and hear from both sides, it's a little bit different situation than going there and with a group that says clear terrorist ties and not denouncing that, not saying like this. These guys are on clearly crossing the line. I understand BDS, but associating with a group like that's pretty tough.
So MIFTA has been getting noticed in the last day or so. Barry Weiss of the New York Times wrote a column saying that she thinks that Netanyahu made a mistake here, but she also criticized Omar and Tlaib for noxious views about Israel. And she wrote that about MIFTA that it's an organization that has proudly praised female suicide bombers and pushed the medieval blood libel. Is it fair to hold Omar and Tlaib responsible for the actions of MIFTA? What do you make of it all?
Well, I think it's fascinating that MIFTA has actually taken other members of Congress into Israel and hasn't had an issue. So that makes one wonder, well, why these two in particular? Is it because they are Muslim women in Congress? Is it because they're women of color, when clearly Israel has held up the standard of freedom of speech that all democracies throughout, like advanced democracies in the world, hold up? And they're taking now a lead, unfortunately, from the more right-wing, fundamentalist, nationalistic sentiments that are rising throughout the globe. And unfortunately, we're dealing with that here in the United States as well.
And Jackie, a spokesman for the Israeli Interior Minister, gave CNN a copy of the letter submitted by Congresswoman Tlaib yesterday asking for the humanitarian permission to visit her family. And she says in the letter, I will respect any restrictions and will not promote boycotts against Israel during my visit. I mean, she has every right to change her mind, but she did not express any concern there.
Well, right, and perhaps it's because of, everything that happened in the intervening days, right? I know that she sent that. However, it does seem like now she has, there's a reason for her to, this is creating a lot more interest in BDS. It's creating
the boycott, divest, and sanction movement, boycotting Israel.
Which is one of the reasons that they were told that they couldn't come. So.
Because it's a law in Israel to not let boycotters in, yeah.
Exactly. But these are members of Congress, so it is a little bit different. That said, yes, she did change her mind, but she also has been getting a lot of attention and has become I don't want to say rock star, but she's become a focal point of this movement now, something that Republicans are going to remind Democrats quite a bit as we go toward 2020. But, if she went, perhaps she would be ceding that a little bit.
I think it's fair to call her a rock star in the progressive left.
Well, yeah, it's brought more attention strategically than I think Bibi or Trump would have wanted on the issue in particular of Israeli-Palestinian politics, which is the effort to divide the Democratic Party along these lines has actually only united people across the political spectrum who believe that this is actually a national security threat to democracy, right? If another country can determine if a member of Congress can come in or not, and that country is a democracy, and the president of the United States is the one saying, don't respect my political opponents, that is telling everybody that the president of the United States is now willing to throw his political opponents under the bus and not defend average citizens overseas who may not agree with him.
And Laura, one of the very interesting ramifications of all this was a response from Senator Bernie Sanders, obviously one of the leading presidential candidates, who tweeted today, if Prime Minister Netanyahu doesn't want members of Congress to visit Israel, then maybe he can respectfully decline $3.8 billion in annual funding, the largest amount of U.S. aid to any country. That escalated quickly.
It did, and Sanders has had a history of being further to the left on this foreign policy than a lot of the rest of the field. We know that he's pushed the field on Medicare for All. He's also pushed the field when it comes to his viewpoints of Israel, and he's also more in line with Tlaib and with Omar than some of the other members of Congress. But what's interesting here, too, is that despite repeated efforts by members like Steny Hoyer, the majority whip, even by Kevin McCarthy, who said that he thought that they should be allowed in. As soon as Trump tweeted this out, Israel took a different stance and decided against letting these members in.
And is that one of the goals here of President Trump, to create some tension and division in the Democratic Party?
So as Jackie points out, right, look, again, it does elevate the issue. It does make it bigger. It does make them cause celeb amongst the BDS movement. But to Jackie's point earlier, I think you'll hear a lot about this in the fall, right? It'll be a wedge issue whether Democrats should support whoever the candidate is because they're pro-Israel enough. That'll be.
But you did see AIPAC come out and say that they disagreed with Netanyahu, which was very noteworthy because they usually back Israel no matter who's president, no matter what's happening.
But I think it's fair to say that Tlaib and Omar, whoever the nominee is, they're going to be pressed on Tlaib and Omar and their views.
And also the BDS movement in general, which is getting a lot, which is not very AIPAC friendly.
Everyone stick around. We got a lot more to talk about. Trump, the president.